Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, mister. Today I will do English assignment. The first is vowel. E, C, E, happy. E, sit. E, ten. E, cat. O, got. O, saw. U, put. U, actual. U, to. And then O, about. A, mother. A, say. Yay, cry. Yo, row. Wow, how. Boy, boy. Ear, near. Air, hair. Were, sure. And then we change into invoice. Okay, first is p, mop. K, kick. T, do. T, church. F, fan. Th, fan. S, six. Sh, shoe. And then voice. B, mop. G, gig. D, do. J, jam. Fizz, fan. Z, then. Z, zoo. Z, Fijian. Okay. Okay, next a certain preacher became wise to the fact that he was not making a hit with his congregation. The parishioners did not seem inclined to seek him out after services and tell him he was a pansy. He suspected that they were rapping him on the quiet. The preacher knew there must be something wrong with his talk. He had been trying to expound in a clear and straightforward manner, omitting foreign quotations, setting up for illustration of his points such historical characters as were familiar to his hearers, putting the stubby old English words ahead of Latin and rather flying low along the intellectual plane of the aggregation and chipped in to pay his salary. But the pew holders were not tickled. They could understand everything he said, and they began to think he was common. So he studied the situation and decided that if he wanted to win and them and make everybody believe he was a newbie and boss minister, he would have to hand out a little guff. He fixed it up and good and plenty. On the following Sunday morning, he got up in the lookout and read a text that didn't mean anything, read from either direction, and then he sized up his flock with a dreamy eye and said, "We cannot more adequately voice the poetry and mysticism of our text than in those familiar lines of the great Icelandic poet Iconafrog." He when the preacher concluded this extract from the well-known Icelandic poet, he paused and looked downward, breathing heavily through his nose like Camille in the third act. A stout woman in the front row put on her eye glasses and leaned forward so as not to miss anything. A venerable harness dealer over at right nodded his head solemnly. He seemed to recognize the quotations. Members of the congregation glanced at one another and if to say, "This is certainly hot stuff." The preacher wiped his brow and said he had no doubt that everyone within the sound of his voice remembered what Quirinius had said. Following the same line of thought, it was Quirinius who disputed the contention of the great Persian theologian Ramtazuk. That is all. Thank you. That's all from me, Mister. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.